Welcome everybody to York and York St John. I'm a little nervous because obviously it's the first time I'm representing in terms of a speech, so please bear with me. What I'm going to do is I've basically converted my PowerPoint to a video, and I'm just going to let it run while I talk and tell you about my grandfather. I've also brought my sister with me to support me, so just to give me a bit of support. So here we go. So my grandfather, the late Nek Chand Saini, Padma Shri, what do I say about him? His name means kind, and Chand means moon. And he, as a person, was the most humblest person you would ever meet. His beginnings in the year 1924 were in what is current-day Pakistan, in a district called Shakkargarh. And, you know, village life, as simple as it can be, no complications, not, simple life, simple childhood. Mother telling you stories of gods, goddesses, kings, queens, everything that, you've probably been told in your childhood of stories. And he basically took all that in. And of that era, as you can imagine, played outdoors, played in the area that he grew up on, went to the banks of the river, climbed off trees, and, simple. And I think that's where his love for the nature came from. I remember speaking to him, and I think there's been many reports when he's talked to journalists where he's talked about the fact that he finds natural materials from the earth. They talk to him in terms of he can see people from them, animals, from stones. There's life that he saw there, and for him, nature meant everything. But unfortunately, 1947 came along and changed everything for India and Pakistan. The mass migration that took place, it really did change a lot for his family, his parents, his three brothers and three sisters. They all had to leave their home village of Beriyan Kalan and walk what was the border across to India and start life again. Nothing remained the same. That childhood, those simple days didn't seem to exist anymore, and, moved on. Sorry, very nervous. And so it was a tough time for everybody. I know it's been in history, it's written in books, but the personal experiences, the danger that they felt, meant that they left everything behind. Had to begin again. And so he finished school and went to work in a public works department, first in Karnal, which is just between the capital Delhi and Chandigarh. Well, Chandigarh didn't exist at that time. And he then worked in a city called Faridabad, which is just outside Delhi, got married to my grandmother, and then finally moved to Chandigarh, which was the first planned city under the Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru to be built. And it was Le Corbusier who was commissioned to build the city. So my grandfather joined the public works department there, and was as a roads inspector. Worked in as you can imagine, demolishing villages to construct this mammoth city. And that's where, obviously, you're all aware of Le Corbusier's love for concrete and cement. And the city is built on that. And so lots of waste materials as part of the construction of the city. and he basically started collecting items and storing them in 1958 and taking them to a clearing in a jungle just near the High Court in Chandigarh, and started, getting waste, electrical sockets, broken plates, broken crockery, bangles, hair, anything that you can think of. I think he was a pioneer of his time in terms of recycling waste, unknown to him, in the 1950s, at that time. So, and also used to go to the local, to the nearby river to collect stones and rocks on his bike. He used to cycle everywhere, and start putting them together in that jungle clearing, where he worked for around about 18 years for his hobby in secret. He built a hut for himself, burnt tires and oil drums to keep light. And that is where he worked after work. And on the weekends, anytime he spent there, building his childhood, childlike village that he spent time with, and wanted to basically, we all talk about our childhood, we try and tell everybody what we experienced, but I think he wanted to show people what his childhood was, and that's what he created in the Rock Garden. And for him, it was a kingdom of gods and goddesses from the stories that his mom used to tell him, a time of peace, a time of happiness where there were no complications, no politics, no war, where everybody lived together in a peaceful way. And I think he wanted to relive his childhood and let everybody experience it. And the garden grew. So in 1975, it was discovered by some local government officials who, it really did. It just danger of illegal. It was called illegal construction, and they really wanted to demolish it. But there was the local architect M.N. Sharma and M.S. Randhawa, who basically said no. He looked at what my grandfather created and went, no, this is of value. This is something that needs to be nurtured and grown. And therefore, in 1976, the Rock Garden on the 24th of January opened, and it was from its first phase. It's grown over the years because of the support that was provided by the Chandigarh administration at that time to help grow the garden from phase 1 to phase 2 and then eventually phase 3. It's actually, as a correction, it's not an 18-acre, it's an actual 38-acre garden. Over time, the initial phase 1 was very small. The earlier images showed you the original stones and things that he collected from the river. But then as he got a labor force to help him develop the garden further with broken crockery and plates, this is what he created. And in basically is a garden full of animals, people, and celebrations. So with the support of the Chandigarh administration, he started getting recognition worldwide. In 1980, he went to Paris, and he was awarded my French is not great, so he got awarded the Grande Médaille de Vermeil in Paris. And in the same year, he also visited USA and the Washington, D.C. Children's Hospital, where he did a bit of a commission. And like Alex said, 1984 was awarded the Padma Shri by the Indian government, which is the equivalent of a knighthood here in the UK. So yes, he started getting recognition, but as as things develop, as you start getting recognition, you also get people who dislike this. And between the years 89 to 91, there was, in the change of the administration, some people didn't like it and really wanted to demolish the garden and build a highway through it, of all things, through the jungle. And I think from there, that really proved the people of Chandigarh came together and basically built a wall around the gates of the garden to protect it. And since then, it's been protected by a lot of people, and it's visited today by over 5,000 people a day. The third phase opened in 1993, where there is this open landscape of swings and areas for entertainment. I think bringing back the open areas from his village when he used to play in the swings as a child to, bring the freedom that modern life and our adulthood brings. We get stuck in the day-to-day running of our life, but we forget our childhood-like laugh that we had when we just had that swing and we could, sit on it and just play for hours. So yes, he bought lakes and waterfalls for everybody to experience, and again using mosaic. This in particular image, is made out of cement bags to create this artificial waterfall in the garden. So yes, he started getting recognition, and in 96 he went on a tour of the US. And again, change in government and administration meant that the garden got vandalized significantly, and it caused a lot of problems. But I think that's when, in 97, when the Nek Chand Foundation was set up with our good friend John Maisels, who has the Raw Vision magazine, to support and ensure the preservation of the garden so that we can all have it for many years, began. And there's been lots of exhibitions, lots of places that he's been in the world. As I've said, the US, the biggest collection outside of India is in just outside of Sheboygan in Kola, by the Kola Foundation. He's had exhibitions here in the UK, in Europe. There was one at the Pallant House Gallery in Chichester. There was one in Italy, France, Spain, Switzerland, and currently there's an exhibition, I think it's still installed in a Serbian museum just outside of Jagodina. I think that's how you say the city's name. So I think all I can say about my grandfather is a humble man who brought to life his childhood for all of us to enjoy and walk around. He was an amazing man, humble, and all he wanted was to bring a smile on everybody's faces. And I hope by seeing the images, it kind of gives you an idea of the scale of what he's created. After his death in 2015, my uncle has been trying his best to preserve the garden, and in 2017 we created a dolls museum made out of rag dolls, and that has a rebar construction, but filled with rag material. And that is something that he brought with him from his childhood, where his mum used to make these patchwork kind of quilts and patchwork anything that you could save at those days, you would reuse. And these rag dolls tell a story of the village. So the rock garden overall tells you the life, but the museum also depicts all elements of a village life. A woman looking after her child. There's the traditional water carrying clay buckets that you use. A man with his camel. It's a fantastic experience when you walk in there. And it's like a time machine, transports you back into a simple lifetime. It depicts the simple nature of the people at the time, the school, how teaching used to be, the village school, the marriage ceremony where there'd be a huge procession and everybody would come together to celebrate a wedding. The priests, the children, the day-to-day activities. There's a lady here who's using cow pats to dry them out that they use for fuel when they're cooking. So yeah, it's just brings to life something that probably doesn't exist anymore in modern day India. I think my uncle has done a fantastic job to bring my grandfather's dream, because he wanted to continue building and creating, but obviously life got the better of him. I do hope that all of you get the opportunity to go and visit the garden and experience it for yourself, because you will all take something from it that I probably can't show you in the images here, bring you something. Really, I really haven't got anything else to say. I think the images will say everything for you. Thank you, everyone.